recruiting is always something you have to keep a pulse on when it comes to the college football landscape. But currently, summer is where a lot of the hay gets made for most of these top schools. And so what I'm saying is keep an eye on two things. One, the official visits, where these top kids are taking visits to. The second thing is keep an eye on the On3 industry team recruiting rankings. And there's been a couple of moves here, even in the last few hours, quite honestly, with some of these teams. So I'm going to kind of speak generally about where these teams are right now so we don't date ourselves here and telling you where they're ranked. But there's some highlights we got to make sure we're keeping track of. And I want to start in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Michigan, before we got on air here, had a top 5 class in the country. A top 5 class in the country. I'll just say this for Michigan, as good as they have been the last couple of years, they have done it without the most talented roster in the Big Ten. And so why is this significant for Michigan? Well, now you already take a school that's kind of known as a developmental program, like a school that you get them to campus and then you get the very most out of them when they're there. Like that's a big piece of it. But now, what if you get better ingredients? What if you just have more talent on your roster and you develop that? Well, then I think Michigan becomes very dangerous. And so for Michigan, the fact they've recruited at an elite level is not something we should overlook because it's not something they've done super consistently, at least the last couple of years. And I think you're seeing some dividends from Jim Harbaugh making a point that he's going to be around from what we can gather. I think you're seeing the dividends from what they've done on the field, beating Ohio State twice, being in the college football playoff the last 2 seasons. I think Michigan's a hot brand right now, and they've had a big official visit weekend this past weekend. Michigan's hot right now, and that is dangerous for the rest of the college football landscape. So keep an eye on the Wolverines. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you watch the Inside Scoop that's on this very channel. Josh Newberg, a national recruiting analyst for us here at On3, does a phenomenal job. Go check that out. It's on this channel, all right? You will not be sorry. All right, another school we got to talk about here that is making moves this recruiting season, this summer recruiting season. How about the Clemson Tigers right now, man? Clemson, last I checked, had a top 5 class in the country. They made a huge leap this last week. I guess they went from 14 all the way up to 4. And the last couple of years, they've been outside the top 10 in 2022 and 2023. And you would say, okay, well, big whoop. They can still go get guys through the portal. They'll still develop. Yeah, they'll still develop. But remember now, Clemson, they don't really go to the portal. Not really how Dabo does things. They're not a big portal team. And so for Clemson, for them to be in the top 10, it is even more important for Clemson than it would be for whatever other school you want to insert here that would use the portal. And so for Clemson, the thing that I've said for them is it really feels like old times. It feels like this is the way that Clemson was recruiting when they were showing up for the college football playoff every single year, it felt like. And this is a big year now for Dabo Swinney as they continue to, press on towards being back to where they were those college football playoff appearances. I think the fact that they are sitting where they are right now says a lot about how Dabo is perceived on the recruiting trail and how kids still view Clemson. Like there's so much talk in the college football world about Clemson's kind of fading and the games passed Dabo by. Like that's not what these recruiting rankings are telling me. That's not what these high school big-time ballers are telling me when they're picking Clemson. Like I think we're starting to see more and more of a direction for Clemson as it pertains to the rest of the college football landscape and how they're viewed on the recruiting trail. And I also want to say this. Clemson this past week, they landed 2 big-time wide receivers, 2 4-star kids. And we've said this for a while here. For Clemson, the next step for them is going to be landing some more versatility in a skill set standpoint at the receiver position. And so for them to do that, I think it just shows that Dabo Swinney has a very, very solid amount of self-awareness for his roster and for what his team needs. So for Clemson, feels like old times. Tigers are rolling right now. Let's stay in the ACC, though. Let's talk about the Florida State Seminoles. We got a lot of Seminole faithful that tune into this show pretty frequently. Before we do that, though, I'll just ask this one thing. If you could like the video, we'd be at our goal. Also, if you could subscribe to the channel, that would help us do more of what you want to see. So thank you in advance for that. All right, let's talk about the Noles, shall we? They're starting to see some real dividends on the recruiting trail. Last I checked, they had a top 10 class in the 2024 cycle. And this is significant because what have we seen from Florida State the last couple of years and Mike Norvell? They've built to the success they had last year, yes, but The thing with Florida State was they weren't necessarily crushing it on the recruiting trail. They were going to the portal. And one thing we talked about a lot on this show is, well, why is Florida State going to the portal? How are they going to the portal? Why are they able to grab some of these top guys? I think some of it is the pitch you can make with Mike Norvell as the head coach and the brand of Florida State and all that. But I would even say this, for Florida State, they were able to pitch playing time. Like when Mike Norvell took this thing over in Tallahassee, he looked at his roster and he's like, look, if we want to win soon, we got to go get some players that can help us now. And they've done that, clearly. You saw what they did last year and what they're looking to do this coming season. Like, Florida State's built up to this now. And so the reason why I think they're starting to see some, dividends is they've had success on the field now to where they can go and pitch that on the recruiting trail. And like I've already said during this live show, the block is hot in the state of Florida. Like, there's a lot of talent to grab within the Sunshine State. And last year, they had the number 19 class. The year before that, they had the number 24 ranked class. Before that, the number 18 ranked class. Y'all right now, they're in the top 10. And I wholeheartedly believe that is a dividend they're seeing from what they did on the field a season ago. So Florida State now, if they start recruiting some of that top talent, if they take over the state of Florida, it's going to be problems for the rest of the country. Something just flew in my eye, Nick, during the live show. We're a blue-collar operation. We just keep going. We don't care. Live and live in color. All right, we'll keep on rolling here. Let's talk about Wisconsin. Wisconsin right now has a top 25 ranked class. Top 25 ranked class through the Badgers. And that may not sound super bizarre to hear because you think about Wisconsin, you think about the brand, and they're in the Big Ten. I think Luke Fickell has just pumped a whole lot of life into this operation. Because last year, they had the number 47 ranked class. Year before that, number 33rd ranked class. Like, recruiting at this level for Wisconsin is not a thing that we're super accustomed to. Okay, usually they've done it with what I would call OKGs, which stands for our kind of guys, meaning they'll take the 3-star, they'll take the 2-star, they'll take the guy that's going to fit in their system well, the culture guy, and they'll go win with them. And they'll be just fine. Like, that's how Wisconsin's done it over the past couple of years. But now you bring in Luke Fickell, and one, he's got some skins on the wall with what he's achieved as a head coach. So you're like, okay, I go play for him. I'm going to win. I'm probably going to go and have a good chance to get drafted based on what that Cincinnati team did. If I'm looking at, their resume there. For Wisconsin, you also can't overlook the fact that you're going to be playing in a pretty fun offense if you're a skill position player. Like, long gone are the days where they're just going to line up with 3 tight ends and 2 fullbacks and just run it down your throat. I think you'll still see that in short yardage, and I think they'll still have that available, like kind of keep it in the back pocket. But Wisconsin now, they're going to trot out there this coming season, and there's going to be multiple times where you see them playing with 4 wide receivers on the field. You're going to see them spread it out. You're going to see them air it out a little bit with Tanner Mordecai under Phil Longo now. And so the direction of Wisconsin football under Luke Fickell, I think, is more appealing to recruits. And I also just think, like I said, what Luke Fickell has done over the course of his career, he can picture these recruits, and we're seeing them at this point in time in the 2024 cycle say yes. So Wisconsin, the Fickell effect and the fun offense, that's what I think is bringing kids to Madison. In the Big Ten now, you got Ohio State, you got Michigan, you got Penn State. Who else are you getting? USC, UCLA. Keep an eye on how Wisconsin ends up recruiting maybe the West Coast. I think they maybe have a little more reach now with some of those kids. I'm just saying. Now, here's another school I want to talk about that maybe doesn't get talked about nearly enough when it comes to just college football as a whole because they're a smaller brand, but the Texas Tech Red Raiders, y'all. Currently, they have the top class in the 2024 cycle in the Big 12 Conference. Because remember now, no more Oklahoma, no more Texas, and even when those schools underachieve, what do we consistently say about them? Yeah, they've underachieved, but they've got the most talented roster, but they've recruited the best. Well, they're gone to the SEC in 2024. These kids that are being recruited, they're not going to play against Texas and OU unless they play them in a bowl game. So for Texas Tech, I think you can make the case they have a very decent chance, if they keep recruiting how they're recruiting, to be the new top dog in the Big 12. If you don't believe me, I think there's one recruitment we got to look at that is a perfect example for what Joey McGuire has brought to Texas Tech as their head coach. Micah Hudson is a 5-star plus wide receiver in the state of Texas, and Texas Tech is very much so in the race for him. Like, it's Texas Tech and Texas going head-to-head. Y'all, to be real, Texas Tech historically has no business landing a kid like Micah Hudson. They have no business being in the top 2 in the recruiting prediction machine. Like, What Joey McGuire has brought there, the new energy he's pumped into Lubbock, the new energy he's pumped into that program, I'm just telling you this, Joey McGuire is going to recruit effectively. He's going to recruit the state of Texas like nobody's business based on him being a previous high school coach in the state of Texas. Like, I'm just saying this. Keep an eye on the talent they're acquiring because Texas Tech currently in the top 25 of the On3 industry team recruiting rankings. But like I said, the top class in the Big 12 in 2024. Keep an eye on what's going on down there in Lubbock. Last school I want to talk about here, let's talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Before Marcus Freeman got there, they had had one top 10 class in 2022, and that was the only one they had had since 2014. Now, Marcus Freeman in 2023 had a number 10 ranked class. Before we got on air here, that had a number 7 ranked class. And for Notre Dame, we talk so much about the brand and how they expect to compete, and they've made the college football playoff and haven't made enough noise. Like, the way they're recruiting right now under Marcus Freeman, to put it simply, this is what it takes. There's a great book I'm reading right now by Trevor Mawad, and the title is It Takes What It Takes. And one of the things that book talks about is the illusion of choice. And Trevor Mawad was essentially a mental strength coach, and he would go all across the country and meet with some of the top teams in the country. And one of his chapters is, like I just said, the illusion of choice, which essentially means, listen, if you want to achieve certain things, if you want to compete for national titles, there's not really that many choices. Like there's, the sort of illusion that you can recruit at certain levels and grab certain ranked classes and develop them into into competing for what you want to compete for. But like, if you want to achieve something, you only have so many choices. If I want to run, maybe I'll stay away from if I want to run, because I know we'll get some shade in the comments. If I want to get an A in a class, I don't have the choice of going out with my friends one day or studying. Like, my choice is I have to study. Like, that is the one choice I have. And there's this illusion of all the other choices I have to have, but if my goal is I want to get an A in that class, I have to study. There is no choice. That's what it requires to get an A. For Marcus Freeman and company to bring this whole thing home for Notre Dame, if they want to compete for national titles, there is no choice. They have to recruit in the top 10. They have to consistently be in that upper tier of grabbing the top talent in the country. That's what it takes for Notre Dame. It takes what it takes. And the good news for the people in South Bend is they're recruiting at that level right now. And so keep an eye on Notre Dame. They started out really hot last year as well and sort of faded just a little bit on signing day. Had some kids decommit that were committed in the summer. But Notre Dame, they're doing what it takes to compete how they want to compete. And I think that's worth noting with Marcus Freeman now running the show down there in South Bend, Indiana. So quick disclaimer, there is a long way till signing day. We're talking about this in June. I promise you, these recruiting rankings, they will change a lot before we get to signing day. All right, so keep an eye on this. Go check it out on on3.com. Make sure you're following On3 Recruits on Twitter. They're going to keep you in the know for everything. But these schools right now, I think, are making some noise and are worth following and worth tracking for the reasons that I just mentioned. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.